Crans. In the studio with me today, I have Matt Althoff, who is the Chancellor of the Diocese of Sioux Falls. Thanks for coming in, Matt.
It's a privilege to be here, Renee. Thanks
I
for inviting
appreciate it.
me.
You haven't been back for a while. I looked, and it was like last year, about this time, that you were in talking about pastoral planning. And unbeknownst to us at the time, now you're in again a year later talking about something very similar that is going to lead to more of that. So
I'm a resource to be used very sparingly. So
only once a year.
yeah, there you go.
So we wanted to bring Matt in to talk about Set Ablaze, which is a planning initiative for the diocese to help us rethink the structure of our parishes in the diocese and how we can better serve the Catholics in the diocese and our priests as well. So, Matt, can you just start with telling us what is Set Ablaze and why are we doing this?
Set Ablaze is a thematic term, an expression we can all use to describe an initiative that Bishop DeGroot has undertaken at the encouragement of so many, and most importantly, at the acknowledgement that there are things happening in our midst that are having an adverse effect on the way we encounter church. By that we mean culture. By that we mean limited numbers of clergy or ordained priests. By that we mean the limited number of people. A lot of that comprises the why.
Right.
We're doing this initiative. Set Ablaze is also defined by a what. We hope to create a new structure, as you referred to it, how our parishes and our physical churches are orientated and administered around one another. They are always resourced by priests, so it's in collaboration between a particular collection of churches and a particular numbers of priests that are going to be ministering in that area. And we do so with the hope that we can create a stable structure, meaning that we won't be just trying to fill slots. We hope to create a mechanism by which the bishop can, with confidence, feel as though we can stay in this structure for 10 years, this arrangement. When I emphasize Set Ablaze is very much aligned to recent instruction that came from the Holy Father, the Congregation for Clergy. This is not a phenomenon that's new. Pastoral planning is something our own diocese has been through. I had the privilege of working under Bishop Swain as we implemented many, many mergers. Many years ago, 2014 was the vast majority of those mergers. The Holy See has actually emphasized that in that model, the consultation was done, and then there was a decision made and it was fully implemented.
Right.
The paradigm has really shifted thanks to the introduction of the Holy See. There's consultation leading to parameters, and we're referring to those as pastorates. This is the what that we're creating, but those whats are created with a very explicit intention to then do pastoral planning at a much more local level. So there is much more local involvement in the decision-making and ultimately what is the final result.
Right.
So the what is described in a very macro level with the full expectation and understanding that at the micro level, the what will become described very differently from one pastorate to the next.
Right. So can we do something really important here before you go on? Can you define what a pastorate will be? Because right now we're used to every parish has a pastor and you're all kind of like living on this little island. So this is going to be very different. Can you define what this is?
A pastorate will be a mission field.
Okay.
And within that mission field, there is an acknowledgement there exists particular parishes. They've been there for a while. People are familiar with those parishes. But that mission field is given with an explicit intention of enhancing collaboration, enhancing cooperation, finding ways that we can do ministry in more impactful ways together, and in the cooperation, finding ways that we can delegate and empower people, the baptized, typically the laity, to fulfill some of the administrative duties of the pastor. So on the map, which went up this past week on our diocesan dedicated website, setablazesf.org, you will find lots of familiar town names and parish names, but they are all lined inside of a circle. Those circles represent those mission fields. Those circles encompass multiple parishes. Again, they've been existing for a long time. And so the bishop is at this point in time seeking input. Is there a better place to draw those lines, knowing what results after this?
Right.
Knowing that collaboration and cooperation amongst those particular parishes is to ensue. It's to happen once they all are now going to be led by one priest serving as the pastor.
Right. But then there might be more than one priest in that circle.
Absolutely.
Just one pastor basically running that area or being responsible for the administrative actions, and then other priests helping with other pieces.
It's very important.
As support.
Yep. Collaboration runs lots of ways. As I just described it, it was really between parishes, looking for ways that we can examine ourselves. Where can we become more faith-filled, more vibrant, more effective? And where can we stop being redundant?
Right.
We have RCI program here, RCI program here, RCI program here. Is there a way that we can have a more vibrant program if the three of us parishes would collaborate?
Right.
But collaboration also runs with our clergy. What we find in our current model, where we do create a parish as equidistantly as we can, that was a big important aspect. The last round of planning was equal access or access to the sacraments. Then we end up creating a religious education program, an RCIA program, a pre-sacrament program. And in that, you create more administration. You create more facility responsibilities that ultimately fall to our pastors. And so by creating a mission field that is bigger and meant to collaborate, there is many opportunities for the pastor to delegate and empower, not only on the administrative factors, maybe to lay persons, lay professionals, but also most especially to his brother priests. Right. So the majority of our pastorates, as they're designed or depicted so far, we're waiting for additional feedback. They will be changed, I predict, based upon the feedback we receive. They do have multiple priests assigned within them. And so very, very importantly, that the bishop hopes in this visioning process that we would have enhancement of the collaboration going on amongst the priests. So, they have particular interests, particular formation, particular giftedness that the collection of priests can play to. And if one happens to be good at adult ed, maybe that would be the RCIA. If one happens to be really, really effective with his marriage preparation, maybe they subdivide in the responsibilities and he does more of that. Lots of creative ways that we would envision that collaboration would happen amongst the priests, with the hope, too, that I think the parishes that do have are so privileged to have multiple priests assigned there, I think overwhelming response to that is the people appreciate having multiple perspectives through the preaching, right? And the liturgical styles. So that's another upside to that, is that there could also be within that collaboration circulation. Right. So the priests are rotating to various churches that are within that pastorate.
Yeah. Okay, so I think a big question that comes up is this sounds like it might be harder to achieve the vision of the diocese, but it really actually is at the service of the vision in a lot of ways. Can you explain that, which is lifelong Catholic missionary discipleship through God's love? This is really meant to be at the service of that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
If we keep doing what we're accustomed to doing, we're likely to get the same result.
Right.
The why is framed in this current reality report, and it's lots of data and it's lots of slides. I would summarize it by saying it tries to put a finger on what we all probably sense. Don't we all know people that used to be at Mass with us all the time that we don't see so often anymore? Perhaps we have family members themselves are part of that statistic where they've become disenchanted or uninvolved with parish life, church life. In a nutshell, that's what our current reality report is showing, is that we are lulling ourselves to death. Meaning, as the disaffiliation continues, the trend line is negative. And this is not new. Right. It is an ongoing trend. We're recognizing, though, that doing the same efforts of parish-based ministry is not curbing that trend, is not interrupting that trend. And so Set Ablaze is very intentionally gives us a freedom to do this in a radical way, to go about church ministry in a newfound way with the hope that we might more effectively achieve the vision that you're right. It is the governing factor. Our ambition is no different than the same. It was sort of given to us as Catholics in Eastern South Dakota thanks to the enlightened or the inspired vision that Bishop DeGrood received very shortly after arriving here. In the midst of COVID, that God placed it on his heart, and he's been unwavering in that, and his desire to lead us to a vision of all Catholics living as lifelong Catholics, living as missionary disciples. A term that is oftentimes referred, the death of Christendom, is inspiring much of this. You and I grew up in a world that was largely governed with an ethos that was formed by Judeo-Christian values, with secularism, with all sorts of other influences that are making it more and more difficult. We find government can be very antagonistic, whereas it used to be very, if not agnostic, certainly supportive of the Christian life we aspire to live as Catholics. And now we find, and we find this in corporate America, wokeism. We just find there's a lot of antagonism. So we recognize that the antidote, as radical as the culture has become, the antidote has to be radical as well. And so this is an effort to, again, give Catholics and clergy in particular a freedom to go about their missionary discipleship in a radical way, to foster that, with the hopes of getting a better outcome, of disrupting trends.
Yeah, and as you had mentioned earlier, we really can play to the strengths of our priests in different ways that then can allow them to get out, hopefully among the faithful more, to create missionary disciples rather than always be burdened under the weight of administrative duties with a parish.
Yeah, and I think we all recognize that when we are doing something that we not only enjoy and we have passion for, but we have experience in and we're good at, it's a sign that God has given us a particular giftedness. And when we're doing those things, we tend to be healthier, happy, and holier. Right? I mean, that's pretty intuitive to us, pretty elementary. But at the same time, when we look at our current paradigm, our current model, Father tends to have to be the expert of the roof, tends to be the expert of the sound system, tends to have to be the HVAC expert, in addition to the employer, the boss, because he's got staff. He tends to have to be the best person to pick out who's the volunteer to do this project in the parish, this parish dinner, who's going to lead this, or who's going to be this religious education instructor. And I'm speaking for effect, obviously, with a very broad brush stroke. But the reality is not everybody can have all that giftedness of being an impassioned preacher, a great liturgist, an amazing pastoral counsel being provided in very tender moments, very difficult moments in the lives of the faithful. And then, oh, by the way, be this administrator of so many things. That's a rare person.
It is.
And in that sense, priests start out as being persons first, right? They're human.
Yep.
So that's part of it is to let's accentuate where we thrive in ministry and offload, delegate, empower others who might thrive in other ways because they might be really good at HVAC and sound system repair and roof repair and building maintenance and accountancy. That's a very important aspect of this. Right. That we flourish when we are utilizing the gifts God has given us to in service to the church.
Right. I think another thing that would be helpful to make known is this type of planning or structural planning is actually occurring in several dioceses across the country. I believe I read somewhere that this is starting to happen in Europe, this very same kind of rethinking of what parishes look like, what a diocese, how it's structured. And that's happening because we're all kind of in the same boat. So have other dioceses seen success with this? What do you know there?
Well, what you state that this is a reaction happening in many other churches or dioceses across the globe makes sense, right? Because we are increasingly becoming a flat earth. Technology is bridging gaps between cultures, and therefore influences on culture are increasingly unifying. So that's why this phenomenon is happening. And sadly, that same cultural influence is having the same adverse effect on churches across the globe, in Western Europe and certainly here. Interestingly, not so much in Africa. right? Where you don't have technology, for example. That's
Yep.
that's a hypothesis. I haven't necessarily proved it. Let me emphasize. I think this is a generational thing. So I'm not here to tell you that where it's being used in Detroit or Cincinnati or New York City or even Lafayette, Indiana, some of these others, Omaha, our neighbor to the south, the Archdiocese of Omaha. Nobody's sitting here saying, here is the double-blind, randomized, controlled trial to prove that, in fact, this is the way to go.
Right.
What everybody is saying is that the way we've been doing it isn't working anymore.
Right.
We're not curbing the tide of this cultural trend that's happening, and so we must be radical in our difference. We certainly can go back to the apostolic mission of the Acts of the Apostles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those 12 weren't sent out 2 by 2 by our Lord in the Great Commissioning with 7 finance council members, with a physical church that was
a DRE,
meticulously decorated.
Right.
And, the reality is that there is this idea that there is that proof in the pudding, and that's not necessarily how the church has benefited from the physical church being an evangelistic tool. It's a very powerful evangelistic tool. But all that human infrastructure and physical infrastructure certainly has its limits, and we have to be guarded in that, because as Christendom leaves, they're not going to come to the church,
Right.
We are reliant on missionary disciples to bring the gospel through their personal witness and through their willingness to raise this. I believe in Jesus. I see the works of the Holy Spirit in my life, and let me tell you how. That sort of volunteering. That's going to happen more at coffee shops and at ball games and at book clubs than it is going to happen in the physical church, because as we see our mass attendance rates, they're not coming.
Right.
We have such a decline, and that particular statistic is just one. And that isn't very revealing, because, yes, Sunday Mass is the source and summit, but when we think about what transpires in that hour, it's orientation towards God, but it isn't necessarily application at all times of what I'm doing in the Monday through Friday,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So it is that personal witness. Missionary discipleship is what must be the antidote to this cultural shift. And so all of this pastorate model and all of this Set Ablaze is really an initiative to help facilitate that, to help encourage, to help kickstart missionary discipleship in a more radical way.
Yeah. Very well said. I knew we were going to run out of time fast. So what I would really like to do, I want to ask you one more question before we go, but I think what we should do is maybe have you back again next week to talk some more specifics about some of the things that are happening. So there's going to be a lot of questions out there. And while we have lots of things on the Set Ablaze website that can help people, sometimes it's good to hear it from a live person, even if it is on the radio.
And does have to be from the Chancellor.
Well, you actually speak about it very well. We've been living it for a little while. So the question I want you to answer real quick before we go, if you could. So a lot of people are right now, we've put the maps out as they currently stand, and we want input from them. And so we're starting to get some feedback from that. Why is it important to look at the current reality report before you look at the maps?
Well, if we look at those maps and offer feedback with only the context of what I'm familiar with in my experience with parish, we're missing the point, because those maps don't make sense.
Right.
They if you look at those maps from the paradigm of what we've grown up with a parish model, we will absolutely be killing priests in a heartbeat.
Yes.
Right. What is being asked of one priest to be the pastor of all those churches is inhumane.
Right.
We should probably be sent to get help, emotional, psychological help, examination, whatever.
Right.
And so that's why the current reality report is that it really emphasizes the fact that if we keep doing the same thing, we're going to get the same result. And it's the results that the current reality report is compelling us to do. So admittedly, the map, there's a missing gap that we've had a difficult time sort of explaining fully in a way that is digestible. We're going to have to experience it. I'm absolutely convinced. But the gap is going about ministry in a different way, leads to this new pastorate model, leads to now that circle on a map makes sense. And I want to be very clear. We're not saying that is the circle. Maybe the line is drawn in a different way.
Right.
we very much invite those particular feedbacks from all Catholics living in the diocese. And, the pastorates have conventions, they have numbers, and of course they have place names. So I think you should revise pastorate number 25 to include this parish, X the parish, or send this parish to that pastorate.
Right.
That sort of constructive feedback is super welcome, super appreciated.
And really helpful.
Very, very helpful to us. It is, there have already been, we're categorizing this through the multiple levels of consultation that have gone on with almost exclusively the clergy thus far. We have well over a dozen modifications that have happened. One of our sister archdioceses that have been through this through the same consultancy group we have, they had 27 modifications to their model after it went out to the laity, after the people provided public feedback.
So it really does matter.
It does matter, but to your question, the current reality is, again, if you only look at that because Father is in charge of our church and everything, he's the CEO and everything goes through him and he makes all the decisions, the paradigm through which many of us have operated, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the culture's shifting. And if the numbers of priests that we had wasn't an issue, I don't think we'd be doing this. But we have to take in all these variables that we do have a finite number of priests. We do have realities where priests aren't able to achieve healthy, happy, and holy when all that workload falls to their shoulders. We recognize that the baptized have a place in the church's ministry, a very important place in the evangelistic mission of the church. So it's all those factors that go into the current reality report, or that the current reality is perhaps revealing the need to do, is probably a better way of saying it. That lens is what informs how you give feedback on the pastorate model. Right.
So it's really important. So I really encourage you to look through that current reality report, which is at the website setablazesf.org. And I want to make sure I give you the full name of because I love the full name of this. It's Set Ablaze, Unleash the Fire of the Holy Spirit. We want to be able to unleash that love of the Holy Spirit, our faith, to the rest of the world, and to both our Catholics who aren't going to church so much anymore and those who maybe aren't even Catholic right now. So I hope it's something that we can really come together on. Matt, I'm going to end us here, but I hope you'll come back next week and we can dive into this a little bit more to help people really wrap their arms around it.
Thank you, Renee.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Appreciate it.
All right, if you haven't found us already on social media, you can find us at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Rumble now at SF Diocese. And of course, you can always find us at sfcatholic.org anytime. That's it for us today. Hope you'll join us again next week for more Catholic Views.